Hey everyone, Chris here with another video. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to give a couple of shout outs to a couple of channels that are actually doing contests. That's LouRokTV and then Eric at the Card Closet. Lou is actually, for his contest, he is doing a giveaway where you do your ultimate lineup with relic cards. Unfortunately, I think I have one relic card. I'm not going to be able to enter the contest. And then also for Eric's contest, he is doing what is the oldest card in your collection. I'm not really sure about that either, so I'm not really going to enter that one as well. But it kind of gave me an idea of kind of combining a few ideas of some videos that I've been wanting to do. So basically, the backstory on this is some people may know this or may remember this, but the first packs of cards I ever opened were 1980 Topps football. And I do have a video, my second video that I ever did, where I talk about how I first started collecting cards. So you can go back and watch that. And then the first baseball packs that I opened were 1981 Donruss cards. And the reason I picked, so when those cards first came out, Topps and Donruss came out at about the same time where I was, and I got to choose between Topps and Donruss, and I actually picked Donruss because Mike Schmidt was on the box of cards, and I was a big Mike Schmidt fan, so I picked Donruss back then. So what I'm going to do today is I am going to do an ultimate lineup from the 1981 Donruss set, because I've always kind of wanted to talk about how I really started loving baseball and how I became a baseball fan, and just kind of what really kind of shaped me as a fan and some of the players that I really liked growing up. So my lineup is going to consist of people that I really liked, that I was a big fan of, and obviously some of the greats of that era. And then also at the end, I'm going to open up these packs of 1980 Topps football cards. I'm going to rip those. I've got one wax pack and I've got two Cello packs. So I thought that might be a little fun to do. It's something I've kind of wanted to do with a video before, and I've kind of wanted to show some 81 Donruss cards before as well, because it's just, I love the set. A lot of people don't like it. They think it's ugly. I think it's great. But anyway, for those that don't know, when I opened my first pack of 1980 Topps football cards, the first player I remember in there was Tony Hill. That was in the first pack that I got. It kind of hooked me because I grew up a Dallas Cowboys fan. And that's why I have my profile picture is the 1980 Topps Tony Hill card. So now we're going to get to my ultimate lineup for 1981 Donruss cards. These are all players that kind of influenced me as a baseball fan and kind of really made me fall in love with the game. I watched my first baseball when I was during the 1977 season, but didn't really have a favorite team and was just kind of learning the game of baseball. And then in 1978, Pete Rose went on this big hitting streak. He also got his 3,000th hit that year. I became a big Pete Rose fan. He had that 44-game hitting streak, and became a big Pete Rose fan, but it was still just kind of following my favorite players, learning about the players and things like that. And I would say around 1980 and 1981 is when I finally just really started clicking with loving baseball. Up to that point, I was more of, just kind of watching my favorite players. So, one of the things I like about 1981 Donruss cards are the biographies on the back. Say what you want about the design and all those kinds of things, but they had some of the best write-ups on the backs of the cards. So for my catcher, I am picking Johnny Bench. Now if you were a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, especially the 70s, Johnny Bench was the man as a catcher. He was the catcher, and I think that's kind of hard to dispute. And I'm really kind of surprised I didn't become a Cincinnati Reds fan, but I didn't, and I'll kind of explain where my allegiance did come from. Now, some of these people I had a really hard time, or I felt like they deserved an honorable mention. And I do have an honorable mention at catcher, and that is the kid, Gary Carter. Now, I ended up pulling for the Montreal Expos when I was young. I pulled for them. They were my main team. And I also pulled for the Baltimore Orioles in the American League. But one of the reasons I pulled for the Expos was Gary Carter. I was a big fan of his and used to catch a lot of highlights on This Week in Baseball that would come on before the game of the week. And then, for whatever reason, it seemed like the Expos were on the game of the week a lot back in the early 80s. But he, along with a couple of other players that I'll show in a little bit, were the reason I became an Expos fan. Now, those that have watched my channel for a little bit may know that Pete Rose is my all-time favorite player. I think this is a great card of Pete Rose, so I have him as my first baseman. And just here's a look at the back. Just some great information on the back there. And here's another card that had Pete Rose. And what I like about this, if you flip over on the back, it talks about his hitting streak in 1978, his 44-game hitting streak, and also talks about him collecting his 3,000th hit. I used to spend hours reading the backs of these 1981 Donruss cards. I have a couple of honorable mentions just because I felt like they needed to be mentioned for cards or players during this era. And the first one being this guy right here, Rod Carew. One of the best pure contact hitters ever, and definitely one of the great hitters of that time. Just a great hitter, and 1977 won the MVP award in the American League, batted .388. One of the all-time great hitters. And then my other honorable mention is Pops, Willie Stargell. 1979, he was co-MVP of the National League and then also World Series MVP. I was a huge Willie Stargell fan growing up. So keep in mind, all these guys are players that I really enjoyed watching and learning about when I was becoming a serious baseball fan. So I kind of have that connection to these guys. My second baseman, Joe Morgan. Watched a lot of games of him in the 70s and 1980 with the Cincinnati Reds. I think this was his first year with the Astros. And interestingly enough, I think you see in the back there, you have the wall at Wrigley Field with the ivy. A lot of the 81 Donruss cards for the National League showed Wrigley Field. My shortstop is Robin Yount. Unfortunately, he kind of got overshadowed by George Brett a little bit. They were rookies the same year, and Robin Yount was a great player and helped the Brewers get to the World Series in 1982, although they lost to the St. Louis Cardinals. Now my third baseman was kind of a tough choice, but if you were paying attention earlier, I was a big Mike Schmidt fan. So Mike Schmidt's my third baseman. I distinctly remember pulling the Mike Schmidt card out of 81 Donruss and thought this was a cool looking card with the warm-up jacket and him just kind of sitting there. And he also, in that set, he had this MVP card. And I actually like the MVP card better. I'm a big fan of the MVP cards from this set. And just a cool looking card in my opinion. Now, the other third baseman during that era, and I do have a honorable mention, and it was really tough for me on this, and ultimately I went with Mike Schmidt, but this guy is right there, George Brett. And what's interesting, he was coming off of an MVP season as well. And just to go back to Mike Schmidt, he ended up winning back-to-back MVPs, both in 80 and in 81. George Brett won the MVP. Oh, and Mike Schmidt also was the World Series MVP in 1980. George Brett in 1980 made a run at 400 for a batting average. Actually, going into September, he was batting 403 and ended up batting 390. All he needed was 5 more hits throughout the season, and he would have batted 400 that year. I was a huge George Brett fan growing up as well. For my outfield, right field, I'm going with Mr. October, Reggie Jackson of the Yankees. He had 3 different cards in this set, but this is my favorite one. Just that that swing of his. It's just vintage Reggie. Now my other two outfielders are both Expos players. And again, these are a couple of reasons why I became an Expos fan. And the first one, who I'm going to have as my left fielder, is this guy, Tim Raines, who was one of the best leadoff hitters during that time and one of the best base stealers. Just a great player. I love this rookie card. I just think it's a great pose. I fell in love with the Expos hat and the uniform when I was younger, and that was part of the reason why I became an Expo fan. And this next guy, the guy that is going to be my center fielder, he didn't always play center field, but he did play some center field, is this guy, the Hawk, Andre Dawson. For those that don't know about Andre Dawson, his numbers don't do him total justice. He actually had a knee injury in high school during a football game where he had surgery, and he pretty much played his entire career with a bad knee and had 12 surgeries throughout his career. This guy, and I think Sean Dunston actually said this, that he believed Andre Dawson, if he had not had bad knees, would have hit 600 home runs and had 600 stolen bases in his career. But as it was, he played his entire career, finished second in the MVP voting twice, and then in 1987 won the MVP. Ironically, in 1986, he almost retired from baseball because his knee was so bad. He was having a really hard time getting around. I do have an honorable mention for outfield, Rickey Henderson. This is one of my favorite cards of Rickey. I think it's just, I love it. I think it's a great looking card. And again, he was the greatest. And he'll tell you, he was the greatest of all time at stealing bases. I went with a DH because I felt like I couldn't leave this guy off my list, Carl Yastrzemski. At this point in his career, he was playing first base and some DH, but was also, I think, a 6 or 7 time Gold Glove winner in left field for the Red Sox. For my pitchers, I did a right-handed pitcher, which was Tom Seaver. Tom Terrific. One of my favorite pitchers as a kid. My left-handed pitcher was this guy, Steve Carlton. Of course, he's got that cool 80s looking perm going on there. And then my relief pitcher, I did a relief pitcher. And interestingly enough, people may not realize this about this guy. This is Raleigh Fingers. This was always one of my favorite cards in this set. I love the mustache. It's just so cool. And what people don't realize about Raleigh Fingers, he did not play for the Padres in '81. He played for the Milwaukee Brewers when they were in the American League. And he won both the Cy Young and the MVP that year. I did an all-time manager for this set, and I went with Earl Weaver. Felt like I had to have a representation for the Orioles. Earl Weaver would lose his mind on the umpires on a very regular basis, it seemed like. He was a great manager, though. My mom's all-time favorite player had a coach's card, which I thought was really cool in this set, Yogi Berra. And then I also have some cards that I just kind of wanted to, just some of my favorite cards from the set that to me are very interesting. Have this Vita Blue with that high leg kick. Just a cool looking card, how high his leg is there. Billy Martin, manager of the A's at this point. Say what you want about Billy, but everywhere he went, he won. He was a winner. J.R. Richard of the Astros. Interestingly enough, he did not play in 1981. Had a stroke during a baseball game or warming up for a game, I forget. Had a stroke in 1980 and never pitched again. One of the best fastballs ever. And just a great pitcher. Unfortunately, his career was cut short. Dave Parker of the Pittsburgh Pirates. I actually think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I love the old pillbox hat. Great looking card of Dave Parker, the Cobra. Another feared hitter of the 80s, Dave Winfield, here in a Padres uniform. I was chasing this guy as a kid, Joe Charbonneau, as a rookie. He and Tim Raines were the big rookies out of the 81 Donruss set that I was chasing, and also chased Fernando Valenzuela in the Topps and Fleer cards. Charbonneau ended up having numerous injuries in the 81 season and ultimately retired early from baseball. I was not the biggest Nolan Ryan fan growing up. Not that I dislike Nolan Ryan, I just wasn't a huge fan, but this is a great looking card of Nolan Ryan pitching, coming off the mound there. One of my favorite players growing up was this guy, Steve Garvey. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame as well. Always loved this card for some reason. I don't know why, with the Dodgers jacket behind him and just kind of sitting in the dugout there. I just think it's a cool looking card. Have this guy, George Foster, who had a great year in 1981. I think he finished third in National League MVP voting. What I like about this card is Wrigley Field, the ivy on the wall in the background. Just a cool looking card. Loved Eddie Murray since I was an Orioles fan. Felt like I had to show Eddie Murray. Dale Murphy had not quite become what he was, but I think it was 82 and 83. He ended up winning back-to-back MVP awards in the National League. Dale Murphy was a very hot player back then. Now this is an interesting guy. I did not know who this was at the time. This is Byron McLaughlin. And he was arrested for counterfeiting sneakers. And he got arrested, ended up skipping bail, and was never seen again. Nobody knows where he is. It's kind of interesting. One of my favorite cards, and this last card I'm going to show, was from the 1981 Donruss set, is this. Best hitters card. These were two of the best hitters of the time, George Brett and Rod Carew. Now I'm going to open up these packs. First one here is the wax pack. Would be pretty cool, I think, to get a Tony Hill out of this. Try and do this to where I stay on the camera. There is the 40-something-year-old gum. I will not be eating that. In case you wondered, when I first opened up these packs, I probably ripped them open a lot more than that. So here is the contents of the pack. You have Johnny Gray of the Packers, Craig Morton of the Denver Broncos. See if I can get this on camera. My Dallas Cowboys beat them in Super Bowl 12. Mike Williams of the San Diego Chargers. Benny Cunningham of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sam McCullum, Seattle Seahawks. Nat Moore. Bernard Jackson. Billy White Shoes Johnson. He was an exciting player. His touchdown celebration was epic. Efren Herrera of the Seattle Seahawks. Clarence Scott, safety for Cleveland Browns. Cincinnati Bengals team leaders card. And Don Calhoun. Nothing too exciting there. All right. Open up now the Cello pack. Sorry if I don't keep these directly on the screen there. I'm trying. Broken piece of gum. Norris Thomas, Miami Dolphins. Bob Martin, San Francisco 49ers. Pittsburgh Steelers team card. It's got a little damage on the edge there. Jimmy Giles. Pretty good tight end, actually, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Roosevelt Leaks of the Baltimore Colts. Marvin Powell, who was a great player, actually. Defensive tackle. I think he was a defensive tackle. Was he a defensive tackle or offensive tackle? I thought he was a defensive tackle. No, he was an offensive tackle for the New York Jets. Doug Williams, second year card. Fortunately, that's off center. St. Louis Cardinals team leaders. Tony Galbraith, the New Orleans Saints. Preston Denard of the Rams. Ken Houston, Washington Redskins. George Stark of the Redskins. Ken Stone, St. Louis Cardinals. Leroy Selman, Hall of Famer for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. His brother also played for them. Jim Clack of the New York Giants was also part of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the early days, in the 70s. Marvin Cobb, Larry Brown of the Steelers. I did get a Dallas Cowboy. I do recognize who this is. Preston Pearson. Ahmad Rashad of the Vikings. Mike Phipps. Jim Hart, St. Louis Cardinals, very underrated quarterback from the 70s and 80s. Ken Fantetti of the Lions. And then Butch Johnson, wide receiver for the Cowboys. I would have been pretty happy with this pack as a kid, getting 2 Cowboys out of it. Now, the other pack and the last pack. Get rid of the gum. Ed Newman of the